Recording in progress.
And I would ask if we could stand, and Director Gracia, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Baca, can you lead us in, or give us a roll call here?
Director Gracia.
Present.
Director Bloomer.
Present.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Present.
Vice President Bowman.
Present?
And let the record reflect that President Ortega is absent.
Takes us to number 3, public comment on items not on the agenda. Members of the public may comment on any item not listed on the agenda, but when within the jurisdiction of the agency, speakers are requested to keep their comments to no more than 3 minutes. As provided in the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from acting on items not listed on the agenda. Ms. Baca, do we have any public comments?
No comments have been received via email.
And anything on our Zoom?
I just want to announce if anybody on Zoom, if they'd like to speak during this time, they could go ahead and unmute themselves.
Hearing none. Number 4, public comments on items listed on the agenda. Do we have anybody that wants to speak on something that is on the agenda from the public? Online? All right. Moving along. Consent calendar, number 5.
I move the consent calendar for approval.
We have a motion to take the consent calendar. Go ahead. We have a second.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Director Gracia.
Aye.
Director Bloomer.
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Aye.
Vice President Bowman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That takes us to 6 action items. And I would like to request that all of us directors speak and ask questions before making a motion on any of these. That way we could all kind of see what the others are thinking.
Yes.
So we go to A. We'll go to our general manager, Mark Krause.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. Attached for the board's review are claims submitted on behalf of David Jarvis. Both claims are regarding a vehicle accident that occurred on November 15th, 2022, involving an agency vehicle. The claim submitted by Walter Clark Legal Group on April 17th, 2023 for an unlimited civil case, and the other claim submitted by Liberty Mutual on April 18th, 2023. The fiscal impact is unknown at this time. Legal has reviewed this. It's the recommendation of staff that the Board of Directors reject these claims and instruct staff to refer the matter to Aqua JPIA for their handling. Attached are the claim filed by Walter Clark Legal Group and claim filed by Liberty Mutual.
Very good. Fellow directors, do we have any questions or comments? Starting with Director Gracia.
No comments. Move the recommended action.
Director Bloomer?
No comments.
I have no comment.
Okay, so we have a motion to accept staff's recommendation.
Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Roll call vote, please.
Director Gracia.
Aye.
Director Bloomer.
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna.
Aye.
And Vice President Bowman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Action item B. Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President and members of the board. You have before you the contract for LM Technology Consulting and Statement of Work. And to give a little bit background, in December 2020, the Desert Water Agency Board of Directors authorized agency staff to enter into agreement with Singer Liebeck Business Informatics for an in-depth technology assessment to evaluate the agency's IT infrastructure, really in advance of us implementing a new ERP system, because we want to make sure that our infrastructure was able to handle that. And a part of that assessment, the outcome of that assessment was an IT project roadmap that contained several recommendations for the improvement of our technology infrastructure and operational improvements to meet the agency's need in the present and in our future state as we are making the changes with our accounting and billing system, which is all within the ERP system. Due to the needs that were identified in that technology assessment, in May 2021, the agency engaged with Singer-Lewak Business Informatics for the services of Lynn McIntyre. And Lynn McIntyre was the primary individual on Singer-Lewak staff that did that technology assessment. And so we contracted with Singer-Lewak Business Informatics for her services to provide IT department guidance, such as advisory and coaching of DWA's IT staff during the implementation of and adopting of the technology improvements that were laid out in the IT project roadmap that was produced by that assessment. And Lynn McIntyre, as of April 28, 2023, has discontinued her employment at Singer-Lewak Business Informatics, which this has created the opportunity for the agency to continue to utilize her services with her new company, LM Technology Consulting. And I would like to note that this was not a result of the agency pursuing her services outside of business, Singer-Lewak Business Informatics. This was an action of her own. And so this has not created an instance where essentially we have hired her out from underneath Singer-Lewak. And I continue to maintain a very good business working relationship with the principal that was on our account. And so we have been essentially enabled to continue her services without risk. Lynn has been instrumental in the planning and executing of the agency's IT project roadmap, and her continued support in overseeing the agency's IT project roadmap is desired by agency staff. The goal is to engage with LM Technology Consulting until the IT roadmap is complete, which includes, at the end of it, the hiring of an IT manager to take over the daily management and operations of the IT department. So that component is kind of the last piece of the puzzle, is the hiring of that IT manager to manage the future state. For example, we are under major renovations in our IT department. When we're renovating a building, we hire a contractor to do the renovations, and that provides the oversight on how things need to be implemented and operated. But once the renovations are complete, you go into maintenance mode. So we want to right size our hire for our IT department for the future state to manage it rather than to do the renovations on it. So that's kind of the bigger picture of where we're heading in approximately 18 to 24 months. The fiscal impact of the contract is approximately $385,000. That's an estimated 30 to 35 hours per week for the duration of the 12-month contract term, the initial term. The contract is set to auto-renew for an additional 12-month term with the option to cancel with 30 days' notice. It's anticipated that the agency will utilize LM Technology Services for 18 to 24 months, and the costs associated with the fiscal year 22-23 have already been included in the budget. And the cost to utilize her services under her new company is less than what we are currently contracted with Singer-Lewak Business Informatics for. So we are able to utilize more of her services for less cost. Also within that contract, there is time for her allocated for her to, not allocated, within the contract there is ability for her to pass through the travel costs associated with the services that she'll be providing on-site, because we would like her to have more of an on-site presence, especially in the beginning. This has been put into the contract as we will pay the direct costs. This allows us to stay in complete control of those costs and request them as needed, rather than building them into the rate that would potentially overinflate the rate that we would be stuck with for the entire term of the contract. So this allows us to manage our costs much better. I would like to note that legal counsel has reviewed this contract, and it is staff's recommendation the Board of Directors authorize the finance director to execute the independent contractor agreement with LM Technology Consulting Incorporated to include the attached statement of work and additional statements of work as required. And I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have at this time.
Very good, thank you. Pardon me. I'd also remind our directors, let's wait until we're all done talking before we have a motion or a second. We'll start with Director Gracia. Questions, comments for?
What is our current relationship with Singer Luwak?
Singer Lewack Business Informatics, we contract for Lynn's services, Lynn McIntyre's services under them. They perform the IT project roadmap, and they then provided her services to execute that project roadmap. So that is the extent of our current relationship with them, which at the termination of her employment, they no longer had the staff to be able to continue to provide those services.
So we have a contractual relationship with Singer Luwak today, right?
No, it ended as of April 28th, a few days ago.
Okay. And that was, it sounds like it was a small operation that only had one employee, or?
No, Singer Lewick is actually a very large auditing firm. And so previously, we have contracted with them for our auditing services.
Oh,
We
okay.
went out for an RFP and no longer use Singer Lewick for our auditing services beginning the last fiscal year. We also utilized them for selecting of our, helping us to scope and select our ERP provider, which is Tyler Technology. So they assisted with that project. So all of those statements of work are now complete, and this was our last
Okay.
one with them. So it effectively ends our contract with them.
And so they're not feeling as like an aggrieved party?
We have an agreement with them saying that, you know, they are releasing us from any terms, the provisions of the contract that would prohibit us from contracting with her directly. So the sentiment between the parties is a positive one, and we have left it in a very good, good state as far as communication, openness, and, you know, well wishes essentially for the agency's success.
So you don't feel that we're in a position where we could look at litigation from
No,
interfering with a contractual relationship between her and Singer Luwak, or between Singer Luwak and us?
no, and that is because she had made the decision to end her services, and it was not the agency pursuing her to contract with her directly. The pursuing happened after notice to terminate.
If you're comfortable, I don't see how we don't get sued over this, but, you know, I guess it's worth it if we're doing it, so I'll leave it
And-
to you guys.
We have something in writing from them releasing her. So,
Yes.
I mean,
Oh,
I
okay.
think we're very well protected.
All
We
right.
also contacted our labor attorney to talk about that.
Okay,
So I believe we did. Or I know we consulted counsel, we might have consulted Mike, but I was concerned about the same thing. So I think that we're
all right.
protected.
I know sometimes we enter into these agreements for the purpose of retaining people. I don't know if you do that here, but I know it's common, but this one didn't seem like that was what was happening.
Well, if Singer Lewack could have provided somebody to us, we would have gladly worked with them, but they couldn't do that.
I get it.
So
Okay.
they said, yeah, fine, you know, you can continue to work with her. And they acknowledged that we, you know, we're not after her and trying to take her away from,
Okay,
you know, from them.
thank you.
Good point.
All right, Director Bloomer.
I don't have any questions.
Director McKenna.
I have a couple. The deliverables, as enumerated in the contract, are pretty vague. I'm hoping that staff has a much clearer, you don't have to tell us here, but
Oh, yes.
you have a complete understanding of what we're going to get for this, in this
Yes.
contract?
So we have, I made mention of the IT project roadmap. So that is an itemized list that has several items on there. For example, just a few of them, like vulnerability scans, encryption protocols, IT policies and procedures. So it's a very detailed list of the activities that are associated with it. And so the deliverables are the consulting for the implementation of those and providing the direction and reviewing any sort of vendor proposals and providing recommendations and meeting with agency staff, Assistant General Manager and General Manager Kraus and myself. So there's, so we do have a detailed list.
And staff prefers to wait until this process is complete before we do any search for an IT head? Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, because we're in the process of improvement, and we're designing all of our systems and how they integrate together, which is a different skill set as managing and maintaining it for the future. So we want to get substantially complete with the IT project roadmap prior to starting the search for the IT manager, because that will let us know in our more complete final state the types of skills that will be necessary to manage that in the future. So that's the way that we are going about it. So that's why the hiring of IT manager is postponed to the end of the engagement.
And this contract will take us through the smart metering phase. We'll get all our meters meshed together. Yeah, is that part of the deliverable?
That is not part of the deliverable. While there is an IT component where she will be providing guidance as it integrates into our IT infrastructure. So there are different touch points where there will be oversight, but it is just a contribution to and not oversight of that project.
I guess the question I'm asking is when the meters are all smart and they're all networked together, that data will come in and go into the accounting package directly, or?
Yes, it goes into
Ready for it, in other words?
the account, it goes into the utility billing system, and that is a part of the ERP system. And again, her services are the same as I just explained for the AMI, where there are touch points where there is IT involvement, but it is not an IT project. So it's around the transfer of data. There's that component of the technology where there may be a touch point where there would be consulting and recommendations, but it is not management of that project.
All right, one final question. If the board were at some future time to decide to introduce tiered pricing, would it be possible? Will it be a component of this? I mean, it won't be.
That
it
is
won't be told
not
like we are now, we
under
can't do it.
this scope. That would be under the ERP implementation, the utility billing implementation, which is not what is in this
It's
agreement.
not in this.
No, because they are not related. It's only, there are touch points for servers. And are the servers capable, is our internet connections capable of servicing the new ERP platform? It's not management of the ERP platform. So the services provided by LM Consulting Services is to make sure that we have the IT infrastructure available for us to host our future state of our ERP, which includes the utility billing and the accounting system and our asset management. So it is not the management of that program. It is the support to make sure that we can access that program.
Well, and let me ask, when we discussed tiered pricing before, we were told the technology that we have does not support it. We couldn't do it.
Right.
Will we be told that in 3 or 4 years' time?
That's a discussion for the ERP system, the utility billing system, which we are currently in the process of implementing the financials component of the ERP system, which that is not under the
part of
scope.
this.
This is not a part of this. So we are in the process of those implementation efforts. We're doing the financial component first, and then we will be working on the utility billing component, which will include the ability to be able to do tiered pricing. So that's a part of the ERP implementation not the IT and technology infrastructure improvements.
All right, I get it. Thanks, appreciate it.
I'll come back to us all again because this is a very interesting discussion. First of all, I'm a strong believer in IT, and I think that in some ways it appears that DWA is doing a little catch-up on their back end, because without that back end, we don't have a front end, and we can't even do the tiered pricing and things of that sort. My concern is that we're not moving fast enough. With cyber warfare out there and people hacking into systems, how protected are we right now? And I realize that this company has helped us move ahead. But my concern is we're not moving fast enough. Thus, I'm wondering, is it wise to continue to have a consultant for another a year to 2 years instead of let's go out and find the right IT person who could perhaps put together what has been built right now, what the direction we're moving, and then complement that. And coupled with that is the actual price we're paying. When I look at the amount of money, $385,000 for a person who's not even full-time, I have some problems with that. We could get several IT people for that money that would probably have the ability to do it. And I'm not disparaging the work that has been done or her capabilities, but it seems like a very hefty price tag. So those are my initial thoughts and my questions about this. I think it's worth it, but I would like to see us accelerate and get to a full-time employee who I know we won't be paying them $385,000. I don't believe so.
I have one more question.
Of course, we're going to
go ahead.
continue on
All right.
because this is serious.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I might have misunderstood something you said in your opening. Did you say that we improved a building? Is systems outside of the structure here, or?
That was just a metaphor.
Oh, okay,
Indicating
okay.
that, to
I
right
wondered if-
size
Okay.
our, what we're paying for, so that we're not paying the increased cost of a person with that skill level on staff for essentially forever, but paying for those increased knowledge capabilities for the time period where we need it, and then we move on into the maintenance mode and scale back that higher level and higher cost skill.
I didn't, it was a shock to see the number, the price, contract price, but I understand the importance. My concern really is not necessarily the amount of money, but the morale of our staff. We're going to be paying somebody quite a bit of money for a part-time job. I know that this is something that she won't be thinking about part-time. It's going to be probably focused on it 100% of the time. But I'm worried about how some of our paid regular staff is going to react to that kind of a deal, and whether it's going to encourage more people. I don't know how many times this has happened, but the first time in my experience, I was troubled by that. So I'm worried about the trend or pattern that this sets up, that, our staff is all going to want contracts and 25-hour work weeks and $400,000 a year. That's a tough one to.
I would like to point out that this is what we are doing already. So there is no change other than increased time and a little bit more involvement for the day-to-day operations, which alleviates and frees up capacity for me, because it is something that I am involved in the daily operations, and allows me the opportunity to focus more on the implementation of our ERP system. So it is just a slight increase, and not a slight increase, it is a dramatic increase in the amount of time that we receive, so that we will be able to, one, tackle these things faster, to implement our project plan faster. And it also allows me the more capacity, but it does not change how she's been interacting and been involved with the staff at this level already, and it is for a limited duration of time.
I think we got a bunch of engineers down there that are thinking, well, gee whiz, you know. So that's all I have. I think I got all my thoughts off.
Director Bloomer, do you have any other thoughts?
Nope, I'll make a motion to give authorization to the finance director to execute the independent contractor agreement with LM Technology Consulting.
Second.
Do we have a second?
I second, yeah.
And any other discussion? Then we'll have a roll call vote.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
Vice President Bowman.
I'm hesitant on this because I sense that you do need the help. You need to move this along. And I feel that you should be hiring somebody full-time to do it, and to really offload it. It's already going to pass with 3 votes, but I'm just letting you know that I think that to accelerate it would help yourself and would help the district. All it takes is one hacker getting in and holding us ransom, and it's a painful process. Those are my thoughts. I will say yes.
Motion passes.
That takes us to action item C, request board adoption of resolution number 1299, approving the 2023 local guidelines for implementing the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, for Desert Water Agency. Mr. Riddell.
Yes, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. Public agencies in California are required by the California Environmental Quality Act to adopt and implement their own local CEQA guidelines. And so Desert Water Agency has always done that since the 1970s when CEQA was first enacted. And so the agency has and maintains a set of CEQA guidelines that correspond with requirements in the California Code of Regulations and in the statutes, and are updated periodically to reflect changes in those regulations or else changes in the law resulting from cases that require some tweaking of the local CEQA guidelines to make sure that they're always consistent. And so on a periodic basis, sometimes annually, sometimes once every 2 years, our CEQA experts in our office keep tabs on changes that have been made that should be reflected in local CEQA guidelines. We maintain CEQA guidelines for a whole host of our public agency clients, including Desert Water Agency. And so the cost of doing that is sort of spread among them in order to keep the expense down. And so that's a service we provide to Desert Water Agency along with a whole bunch of other public agency clients that we represent. And so what is before you now is a resolution to make some revisions to the local CEQA guidelines adopted by Desert Water Agency in order to correspond to some changes that have been made primarily by statute that would affect your local CEQA guidelines. Now, if you took a look at the memo that's in the packet, you probably noticed that a number of those changes really apply to projects that Desert Water Agency would not be involved in. And so they're somewhat irrelevant, and yet there are provisions in your CEQA guidelines that cover those kinds of projects, and therefore your guidelines need to be amended even in those respects as to projects that the agency probably would not be involved in. And so, for example, one of these suggested changes provides an additional exemption for certain kinds of transit priority projects. So, for example, bicycle and pedestrian projects that would be approved by a city are now exempt by law if they meet certain requirements. as a result of Senate Bill 922. Another one that really applies to cities, not to Desert Water Agency, has to do with transportation plans, including pedestrian plans and bicycle transportation plans. One provision that potentially could apply to the agency, except I doubt that you have this circumstance, is an exemption that's been provided by Assembly Bill 1642 that would exempt well installation projects that serve communities that have been designated by the State Water Resources Control Board as high-risk or medium-risk systems or areas that need the well in order to have an adequate water supply. And so I don't know if you have any area like that within Desert Water Agency's boundaries that would warrant that kind of an exemption. But if you do, then that exemption would be available under AB 1642. So that change would be made as well to your local CEQA guidelines to have it conform to that new legislation. There's another exception that was created for cities having to do with affordable housing developments, and that also would result in a change in in a provision of your local CEQA guidelines. Another one applicable to cities for mixed income housing developments along commercial corridors. Again, an exemption that's been provided. It's not something that you would ever need to exercise, but it would warrant a revision in one provision of your CEQA guidelines. Another one is there are references in your CEQA guidelines to the Public Records Act, and the legislation was reorganized. The code was reorganized by Assembly Bill 463, which resulted in moving a lot of those sections to a different portion of the government code, and some of the text also has been changed and reorganized. And so another change that's warranted for your CEQA guidelines this year is a change in those references to the Public Records Act. It used to be in Government Code Section 6250 and following. Now it's been relocated to Government Code Section 7920 and following. So that's just sort of a technical change that would be made. And then finally, it seems like every year they increase the fees because the Department of Fish and Wildlife reviews environmental documents as they are prepared and filed, and the fees keep going up to cover the cost of their review. And so the fees for a negative declaration or a mitigated negative declaration when it's filed is now $2,764, and for an environmental impact report, the new filing fee is $3,839.25. So that change would be made as well in your CEQA guidelines to correspond to that change in state law. You have before you proposed resolution number 1299, which would adopt a new set of guidelines with those changes incorporated into them. Otherwise, these old guidelines would remain the same except for those changes. And so that's resolution number 1299, which would adopt a new set of guidelines to replace the previous set of guidelines pursuant to statute and the California Code of Regulations.
Thank you. Director Gracia, any questions or comments?
No questions?
Director Bloomer?
No questions or comments?
I have a few. It happens that I was reading an environmental impact report and I was halfway through when this agenda item landed in my email. So these are general questions about the process, not specific to this motion. But the one I was reading was an item pending in Desert Hot Springs on the Coachella Industrial Cultivation, which is on Indian Canyon. In their environmental impact report, they say the only one place in this 1,200-page document they mention the Desert Water Agency, and it simply says groundwater extraction is proposed as part of this project. And they don't say how much. They're drilling a well, or have drilled probably already, 750 feet. They have a 4 million gallon storage tank. What part does the Desert Water Agency play in approving or not approving that item in the environmental impact report?
I don't know the extent to which they would have conferred with the agency about that. Hopefully,
I don't think they have.
okay. Well, the agency has an opportunity to comment on the environmental impact report as it's being processed.
It just goes through.
Yeah, but I don't think the agency has to take any action on it.
So it doesn't come in here as a matter of course and get reviewed against these guidelines. They just make a statement. They basically say, will not substantially deplete groundwater supplies, which is, it's easy to say when the groundwater supplies are as large as they are. But the question really was, what part do we play when something significant happens groundwater related in our service area?
And you said that's in Desert Hot Springs?
It is, and they talk about, well, they say, the Garnet Hills Sub-Basin occupies the northern portion of Coachella Valley and forms part of the Coachella Valley Groundwater Basin. This basin is managed under the Mission Creek and Garnet Hills Sub-Basin Water Management Plan, operated by Coachella Valley Water District, Desert Water Agency, and Mission Springs Water District. So we get a passing mention, but there's no process apparently where they come in this building and say, is this okay with you guys? They just seem to be able to do it.
Now, the permit is issued by the county.
Sorry?
Permit is issued by the county, and
By the
until,
county.
yeah, and just recently, they've instituted a process where the groundwater sustainability agencies have to review a well permit, and there's a form that the pumper has to fill out, that they're in compliance with SGMA. So there's a little back and forth there, but before that, there wasn't really that much. Groundwater, is a right to property ownership. So, I mean, we don't really get involved to restrict, well drilling or pumping at this point.
Our policy is 50 acre-feet before there's a rack.
10. And in Coachella Valley Water District, it's 25.
So is
So it's a
Mission
little higher.
Springs. So just, that's
So
one
if they go
thing.
above 10 acre-feet per year,
50.
they're
Yeah.
no
50
longer
acre-feet
dividends?
a year.
Okay.
And then
They don't
SGMA
seem to
SGMA
say.
puts it at 2 acre-feet per year, so everybody's kind of got a different number.
4 million gallons is 12 acre-feet. So, all right, that's
it's-
helpful, actually.
If it's 12 acre-feet, then they will have to pay Desert Water Agency's
They
replenishment
have to come in
assessment,
then, right?
just like all other pumpers up there in that basin.
Yeah, if they pump 10, they'll pay anything 10 and above.
Good, good. So we also prepare environmental impact reports for things that we do, potentially, right?
Yes, unless they're exempt. There are a number of exemptions in CEQA. So, for example, if you have a short main extension in a street, that's typically exempt. When you set a service line to serve someone's property, that's typically exempt. So there's a bunch of exemptions like that. And sometimes, although projects are not exempt, it's pretty clear they don't have any environmental impact. In that kind of a case, as you probably know, the agency would have to take action, but it would likely be, excuse me, adoption of a mitigated negative declaration or else a negative declaration.
Right. Good, good. Appreciate
When
the answer.
projects are exempt, the agency can file a notice of exemption. And when that is done, it begins a very short statute of limitations for a challenge, 30 days. So,
Oh, right, okay.
excuse me.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
I would entertain a motion to,
Move the recommended action.
all right, Director Gracia, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
McKenna? Roll call vote, please.
Director Gracia,
Aye.
Director Bloomer,
Aye.
Secretary Treasurer McKenna,
Aye.
and Vice President Bowman.
Yes.
Motion passes.
That takes us to our General Manager's report.
Thank you again, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. On April 20th, the Department of Water Resources announced another increase in the forecast of the state water projects deliveries for the year. So we went up from 75% to 100%. San Luis Reservoir filled not too long ago. So I mentioned in a previous meeting, we were getting Article 21 water, which is surplus water. And I believe Lake Oroville is completely full now, if not, they're very close to being full. So we had an increase of 25% in our full entitlement, or they don't like to use that word anymore, Table A amount is 55,750 acre feet. So that's an increase of 13,937.5 acre feet. And just to put that in a little bit more context, that's about 35% of what we produce in a year in the Mission Creek Basin and in Desert Water Agency's Indian Basin. So that's good news. On April 21st, the United States Bureau of Reclamation announced that the Desert Water Agency was one of 48 projects that was selected to receive funding from the water conservation-related projects. DWA may be able to enter into a grant agreement with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation for $500,000 towards the completion of its Advanced Metering Infrastructure, AMI, conversion project. Since the time the grant application was submitted, DWA determined that it needs fewer encoder transmission devices, the ERTs, to make all the meters capable of communicating with a fixed network. Staff will work with the Bureau to reflect a more accurate project scope and schedule given this adjustment. There's a chance that the Bureau may not be amenable to these changes. However, the Bureau has in the past been tolerant of some modifications to projects that we put before them. So staff will update the board when this determination is made and on next steps. In mid-May, DWA will be sending its Prop 218 notice to notify customers of our proposed rate changes. This notice will be mailed to billing and/or property addresses for domestic water customers, recycled water customers, and groundwater pumpers within DWA's jurisdiction. This notice has been translated into Spanish and has been reviewed by legal counsel. The notice outlines the process for protesting, including a web forum to catalog and manage electronic protests. The notice is with the printer and is scheduled for postmark on May 12th and to provide the required 45-day notice before rate increases take effect. Staff will invite top users for a one-on-one meeting and is also planning community workshops, one on May 22nd at 3:30 p.m. at Desert Water Agency, another on Saturday, June 10th at 2 p.m. at the Cathedral City Senior Center, and lastly, one on Monday, June 12th at 2 p.m. at the Desert Hot Springs Library, which would be primarily for groundwater pumpers. Staff will update the board on the 218 outreach at board meetings between now and the public hearing scheduled for June 28th, 2023. Desert Water Agency is again hosting a blood drive. We'll be doing that on May 10th between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. Everyone is encouraged to make an appointment to donate. Appointments can be made online through the live stream donor appointment portal. And the blood drive will be here at the Agency Operations Center. Our system leak report, we have 39 leaks, which is kind of an uptick in leaks, and I usually attribute that to changes in temperature. Every time we go from winter to summer, and we get an increase because I think the water velocities in the mains change, conditions change, pressures change because of that, ever so slightly, but that causes an uptick. We don't have any real big leakers on here other than the Vistachino main, which is a large main, 20-inch, and the rest are 1 or 2. We had 2 on Avenida Caballeros and Cerritos Drive and Terry Lane, and those are pipelines that are slated for replacement in our replacement pipeline program. And lastly, I would like to report on a few of my activities and meetings. I've had several meetings on the replenishment assessment charge, and that engineer's report will be coming to you soon. Also had a lot of state water contractor monthly meetings, and also for the Sites Reservoir. Also tribal mediation. Our technical committee is again meeting, and we had a meeting with the Palm Springs Aerial Tramway to talk about rate changes, salt nutrient management plan meetings, also meetings with Sites Authority and Reservoir Committee to talk about financing. state water contractor meetings to talk about the WISIP programs, which sites is one of those programs that the state water project will have to integrate with. We had an executive committee meeting and a couple of legislative check-in meetings with our lobbyist. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Directors, we have any questions for our general manager? Director Gracia?
I don't have any questions, thank you.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
Quick question, I noticed there's water going into the Mission Creek replenishment facility.
Yes,
Yeah.
that started on Friday. I'm glad you mentioned that. So we're delivering 22 CFS to that facility. That started on Friday, and that will continue as long as Table A deliveries are being made to the Indio Basin. So basically split the flow. And
All the way through summer, in other
all the
words?
way through, I think it would be into the fall.
Wow,
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
so big delivery.
Yeah.
our friends up the hill will be happy.
Yes.
But, yeah, I was interested to see it.
Yeah.
I noticed, I think when we saw it in a tour in late August, Emmanuel told us they're gonna have to clear all the weeds and so on before they start, but it looks like the water went in anyway. And it's
Yeah,
a
the
pretty
first-
nice-looking environment, actually.
Right. Well, we had so much rain that we have a lot of weeds sprouting up. In fact, we have a couple trees that have started to grow down below. The water's not going to get that far because that facility can take 50 CFS, and we're only taking 22. So only the top ponds will fill up. But we need to do some work, and that's typical. We do weed removal. But weed removal is pretty difficult with all the boulders that are in the bottom of those basins. So one of our projects that we've been spending money on is to get rid of those, or to move those boulders to the side. So they sort of become riprap on the sides of the ponds. And that allows us to get in there with equipment like a disc, and we could just easily remove the weeds, so.
It gave me one of my other harebrained ideas, and that is that at some point we'll be having to do tertiary treatment on the wastewater before it goes back into the aquifer. And I saw the beginnings of an idea up there that we could create a swamp, a wetland even, using that water. And I wondered, have we got any advanced thinking on that?
So when you say up there, are you talking about in the
Well,
Mission Creek or here?
Well, down here, we're going to, there's a little amount of tertiary treatment going on, but we don't really have a good market for that reclaimed water.
Right.
And I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to create like a wildlife preserve
I think-
rather than settling it in so quickly, but by spreading it more widely? You know?
I don't think the city is really responsible for that, not Desert Water Agency. But what I've seen so far is there are several reports from Stantec. So this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. They did an assessment of what it would take to treat that water, a high level of treatment. And that's what they've looked into. So whatever we wouldn't take, they would have to treat. And that, was approximately $140 million. So that's floating around out there. And the regional board is not happy with the, discharge of that secondary effluent into the recharge ponds. So that's exactly what you're talking about. And our recycle program, we're doing everything we can to expand it. We want to resume, deliveries to Indian Canyons. That would be very helpful. Add some more customers if we can. But truthfully, we can't take all the water all the time.
Right.
So there has to be something like, either they have to clean it up and recharge it in their ponds, or do something like you're talking about, one or the other.
So it's more a city responsibility than?
It is. We've signed on for tertiary treatment, but we can only do so much. We have customers like Mesquite Golf Club that was a customer, and now they're not a customer. And we've had, Ascena came to us and said, hey, we're having financial issues. So we've done some things to try to help them. We're trying to retain our customers. We have the park, the city park at Sunrise Park is slated to come on and take recycled water. So it's just a moving target. We want to get customers, but then customers have trouble, especially those that are privately owned and trying to compete, so.
Great, yeah, appreciate it, thanks.
I have no questions for our general manager. That takes us down to 8, directors' reports on meetings, events attended on behalf of the agency. Director Gracia.
I had a couple. Let me see if I can open up my calendar here. We had our board meeting on the 18th, and then the Big Heart Awards were on the 20th, and then on the 21st, a rather remarkable day for meetings from myself. In the morning, I attended via Office Teams, I guess it's called. Never had done that one before, but it worked. Of the Sites Authority meeting in Maxwell, California. And then later that afternoon, I'm going to try and I attended the Building Industry Association Legislative Luncheon with it was here in Palm Desert, and our Congressman Ken Calvert was the speaker, and he, you know, I got there right on time. I sat down. I got my seat right in front of the podium, you know, and not 30 seconds later, the congressman came in and sat right in front of me between, and we carried on a conversation for the better part of 2 hours about every subject under the sun, including the Sites Reservoir Project, a discussion about that, which he made part of his talk. He talked for about 20 minutes during that lunch. And so it was rather remarkable. He's chairman of the Defense Appropriations Committee in the House, one of the most powerful positions in the United States House of Representatives. For him to sit there for 2 hours, I've worked for some marquee members of Congress and elected officials, the speaker, first female speaker of the State Assembly. None of them would ever come on time to a meeting that they were scheduled to speak at. It never happened that I know of. And they would come, they would hit their podium, and they'd say their piece and out the side door and into the back of an SUV and on the road. And he didn't do that. And we literally talked about everything from Dolly Parton and her we had a mutual friend, you know, Sonny, he now represents the district that Sonny was elected to represent, who I worked for back in the, very, you know, when he was mayor, really. I managed his Senate campaign in 1992 and then his primary campaign for the United States House in 1994. And so the congressman was very intrigued by all of that because, you know, he's a Republican representing a very, not a conservative community here in Palm Springs. So it was an interesting opportunity, and I'm grateful for it. And I know that you guys had a chance to meet him here. He came, visited the district. And so he's very well tuned into the Desert Water Agency, and he's is a big supporter of the, for going back, he explained, for 20 years on the Sites project. And I got to thinking about such a controversial member of Congress being in support of something that is also supported by the Biden administration, and with $2 billion in guarantees for construction. So I have a list here. I won't read the list of Democratic members of Congress from California that also support the Sites project, but I suggest if anyone has an interest or a concern about our involvement in it, that they look up that list. It's a remarkably nonpartisan project and has received support from just about everybody. So I guess it looks like this thing might actually happen, and it was nice to have been able to attend that meeting and be encouraged at the conclusion of it that if you have the opportunity to lobby on behalf of the Sites project, and not 2 hours later, I was sitting in front of one of the most powerful members of the House of Representatives. So I made sure that it became part of the conversation, and it did. And we also talked about the Salton Sea and the need for the work to continue down there. And so it was a remarkable day.
Wonderful. Anything else?
That's it.
All right. Director Bloomer?
I too went to the Big Hearts Rotary dinner, which was a very nice event. And then this past weekend on Sunday, myself and Tom Kiley presented at the Preservation Matters conference about the importance of water in the desert and for our future. So it was actually a pretty well attended event, and everyone liked our presentation. So they were happy to learn more about Desert Water Agency. So it was good.
Wonderful.
And that's it.
Director McKenna?
I went to the DHS Big Hearts Awards. That was a great event. I went to DHS Big Hearts Awards. Thank you. I thought it was a great event. I was very happy to see we had senior staff there. We had everyone on this dais was there. We made a good showing, I think, for the Desert Water Agency. As the room was emptying, I won the very last door prize, which is the Mission Springs one. Ironically enough, I have a good supply of their pens, pencils, T-shirts, all the stuff, and $40 for Starbucks. So it wasn't a bad night for me. So I've also been monitoring City of DHS, mentioned that earlier. They had nothing particularly relating to us. I tuned into their meeting on Zoom and find they were talking about me. But they didn't name me. A citizen had sent in pictures of illegal dumping, and that people had been apprehended and fined $1,000. So that's my little part in preserving the groundwater around here. That's it for meetings, just those two. Thanks.
Very good. And I also attended the Big Heart Awards, and I think we give our staff a Big Heart Award for attending. Steve hung in there the whole night, and it was awesome. Yeah, it was good. Desert Hot Springs doesn't have many big events like that, and so it was significant. I also attended the Agua Caliente Water Authority, another Agua. And first of their meetings that I've attended, and there's two things that came up that I thought was interesting. Coachella Valley Salt and Nutrient Management Plan update. They were updated by one of their staff members, Anina Wazak, if I pronounced her name right. And also that the second thing was the water year 2022 annual groundwater conditions report. And they will be putting that up on their website June 1st. So something that we might want to see what they're saying about their groundwater conditions report. And that is all I attended apart from our standard executive committee meeting. That takes us now to 9, director's comments, requests. Director Gracia, any comments or requests?
I don't have any comments or requests, thank you.
Very good. Director Bloomer?
I don't have anything.
I have a couple. We've gone from a situation of having no water anywhere to having water everywhere. I see it coming down Tuckreed's Canyon. There's water in Murray Canyon. There's water flowing everywhere. It's even flowed across Little Morongo and got my car dirty. It might be a good point to put out some information on public safety. I know that the Whitewater River is very attractive to people, and I think Coachella Valley puts a security guard on it, but maybe some sort of public message to get the word out, stay away from these water courses because, you can be toppled over in 6 inches of water. And we're not used to that around here anymore. So some safety awareness, I think, would be good on the public. I had another thought, too, which was I was driving along Ramon, which I've done hundreds of times, and I noticed as I was waiting at the light some knocked over masonry, and then I realized it was a DWA facility that we had seen pictures of a few weeks ago. And it made me think, we drive past these DWA facilities all the time, and they're blending into the background. So I wonder, are we missing a public profile opportunity here? It may increase the tendency towards vandalism, but I think we should have some signage on these facilities. I know what they are. I see them on Indian Canyon, but the public doesn't know what they are, and they don't recognize and appreciate what we do. I think there's an opportunity to raise the public profile a little bit with perhaps some signage, a signature color, whatever, and the facilities we have around the city. Just a thought. put it right there. That's it for me.
Very good. I would like us to revisit or look at the policy of our credit card use, and, because we're all going up to Aqua, and there was a little discussion, come and pick up your credit card and your petty cash. And I would like us to just talk about that, to see how long that's been in existence. Maybe we can modernize it if it needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. So just something to consider. And that's all from my comments. That takes us to number 10, closed session. We have 3, conference with legal counsel pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. Name of the case, Agua Caliente Band of Cuya Indians versus Coachella Valley Water District et al., 2 cases. B, conference with legal counsel, which is pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9D1. Name of case, Mission Springs Water District versus Desert Water Agency. And lastly, C, pursuant to Government Code Section 45956.9D1, AT&T versus County of Riverside. Right now, it's a little after 9. Let's gather in our conference room at 9:10 for these closed sessions. Are we ready, Sylvia?
Recording in progress.
We are reconvening from our closed session, and we have nothing to report, nothing reportable. Thank you. That ends our Desert Water Agency meeting for May 2nd. Thank you.